When a reclusive vineyard owner defies a power-hungry HOA queen, a war ignites in the quiet hills of Sonoma. But when her vendetta turns to arson and he's framed for the blaze, one secret recording will flip the script and expose a conspiracy darker than fire. I'd spent the better part of the last 5 years trying to forget the city. The sirens, the boxed-in apartments, the performance reviews that felt more like public executions. That life? Gone. Replaced with fresh air, acres of open land, and rows of Pinot Noir grapes that I pruned myself row by row, season after season. My slice of heaven was in Sonoma County on land I'd bought outright after quitting my job as a senior systems engineer. All I wanted was peace. A vineyard, a barn, my dog Cooper, and maybe a good bottle of wine I could proudly say I made with my own hands. And for a while I had exactly that. Then she moved in. It started with a knock on my gate. Not my front door, my gate. I was fixing the irrigation near the western rows when I saw her, mid-50s, meticulously put together, wearing pastel workout gear and an expression that screamed HOA president even before she said a word. She stood like a judge at a dog show, inspecting every vine like it had committed a crime. "Hello there," she chirped with the passive-aggressive cheerfulness of someone who rehearses confrontation in the mirror. "Karen Bishop. I'm the president of the Sunset Glen HOA. That's the community just on the other side of your property line." I wiped my hands and nodded politely. "Ethan McCain. Nice to meet you." She gave a tight smile and let her eyes sweep across the vines. "Quite the setup you've got here. Though I have to say it's not exactly aligned with the neighborhood aesthetic." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not in your neighborhood." Karen chuckled like I'd just told her a childishly naive joke. "Well, borders are a funny thing, and your property does face our development. It's very visible from our walking path. Some of the residents have expressed concerns." "Concerns," I echoed. "About grapes?" She ignored the jab. "It's just the color of your barn, the fencing, the signage." She gestured to my handcrafted private property sign. "It doesn't really meet our community standards." I crossed my arms. "That's probably because I'm not in your community. This land's outside HOA jurisdiction. Always has been." Karen's smile never touched her eyes. "Well, we believe in taking a collaborative approach. You may not be listed under HOA management technically, but we all share this environment." I nodded slowly. "And I believe in boundaries. Literal ones." She left after that. No overt threats, no raised voices, just a smile and a glance that felt like a warning. 3 days later, I got a letter. Stamped with the Sunset Glen HOA logo, it was written in the kind of faux legalese that screams intimidation. It strongly urged me to bring my property into visual alignment with the HOA's community harmony standards. It listed offenses like unapproved fencing materials, non-conforming signage, and, I kid you not, agricultural overreach. I laughed. Then I shredded the letter and went back to work. But the next day I found someone had trimmed the vines along my shared property line. Not cleaned, butchered, hacked off by someone with no idea what they were doing. Dozens of vines maimed, a whole season of growth gone. I filed a report with the sheriff's office. They took photos, nodded politely, told me they'd keep an eye out. I asked if I could get a camera installed. They shrugged and said it was a good idea. That night I installed motion lights and 2 wireless cameras myself. I wasn't about to let some HOA tyrant vandalize my land unchecked. Then came the gossip. First it was the side eyes at the farmer's market, then the whispering when I walked into the feed store. Finally, someone from a neighboring property, a nice guy named Tom I barely knew, pulled me aside and said, Hey, just so you know, Karen's been telling folks you're storing, well, let's say, not so legal substances in that barn of yours. I blinked at him. You mean pesticides? He looked sheepish. Not exactly. She's implying something worse. I stared at him, then laughed out loud. She thinks I'm running a drug lab? Tom raised his palms. I didn't say that, but she's persuasive. People listen. It was absurd. I'd spent more time arguing with gophers than humans out here. The idea that I'd go from engineer to backyard cartel was so far-fetched it would have been funny, if it weren't gaining traction. I called my lawyer. By the end of the week, I had notarized property records, drone footage of my land, and a letter drafted asserting my independence from the HOA. We mailed copies to Sunset Glen's board and the county office. My lawyer was clear I was in the right. Karen had no authority. The land was mine, governed only by county zoning and agricultural regs, all of which I complied with to the letter. Still, the harassment didn't stop. One morning, I came out to find an anonymous flyer taped to my gate. In bold black font, "Know your neighbor. What's really going on at the Vineyard?" I stood there in the sunrise light, looking at that cheap flyer flapping in the wind, and felt something shift. It wasn't going to be enough to mind my own business anymore. Karen had declared war, and I don't lose wars. I knew things would escalate, but I underestimated how fast and how low Karen would go. A week after the flyer incident, I noticed a black SUV parked across the dirt road that separated my land from the HOA development. Same SUV, same spot, every morning. Sometimes with the engine running. I couldn't see the driver clearly through the tinted windows, but I knew it wasn't a coincidence, and I wasn't imagining things. One afternoon, I spotted a man step out with a camera, snapping photos of my barn, my truck, even Cooper when he was out peeing near the compost. So I walked over. "Can I help you?" I asked, not aggressive, but not exactly friendly either. The guy, maybe in his 40s, khakis and a collared shirt, looked startled. He lowered the camera like a kid caught cheating on a test. "Just conducting an inspection," he said quickly. "For who?" He hesitated. "The HOA. I tilted my head. "Funny, I'm not a member." He offered a stiff smile. "We're surveying the visual impact of adjacent properties." I took a long breath. "Tell Karen I'm flattered by all the attention, but the stalking's getting old." He nodded, mumbled something, and got back in the SUV. It pulled away like a guilty dog. Later that day, I reviewed my camera footage. That same man had been coming by for over a week, always around sunrise and late afternoon. Sometimes alone, sometimes with another person. One video showed him stepping onto my property line, boots on soil, just enough to get close-ups of my barn's side wall. I called my lawyer again. He told me to log everything, every visitor, every flyer, every incident. I started a hard copy file I kept under my bed. I named it The Gospel According to Karen. Within 2 weeks, more strange things happened. A building inspector showed up unannounced. "You McCain?" he asked, standing on my porch with a clipboard. "Depends on who's asking." "County inspector," he said. "We received a complaint that your outbuilding might be non-compliant. Unsecured chemicals, unstable foundation, possible fire hazards." I almost laughed. "You're joking," he shrugged. "Just following up. Got to check it out." So I let him in. Showed him my locked cabinet of fertilizers, my irrigation schematics, even the fire extinguisher mounted to the barn wall. After 30 minutes of looking around and pretending to take notes, he looked embarrassed. "Honestly, everything here's cleaner than my own garage." "Let me guess," I said. "Anonymous complaint?" He gave me a tight smile. "A very concerned neighbor." That night I spotted another flyer, stapled to a post outside the community bulletin board near the county road. Unregulated farm operation adjacent to Sunset Glen. Is your family safe? This one had a blurred photo of my barn at night. The picture was clearly taken with a zoom lens. Below it, in fine print, was a link to a blog titled Protect Our Neighborhood. The blog had one post. It was long, hysterical, full of innuendo, but not a single verifiable fact. Whoever wrote it clearly didn't know the difference between pesticide and compost tea, but they used words like toxic, explosive, and unlicensed distribution. I didn't even have to check the HOA's registry to know who was behind it. Meanwhile, some of the locals, ones I'd chatted with at the Sunday farmers market, had stopped making eye contact. A few even crossed the aisle when I walked by. It didn't take much to turn a few bad seeds into suspicion when the soil was HOA fertilized. Then came the sabotage. I was walking the southern rows with Cooper one morning when I saw it. Leaves curling unnaturally, vines shriveled at the root, entire clusters turned brown overnight. At first I thought it was some kind of blight, mildew maybe, but then I saw the telltale signs. Melted plastic residue and a crumpled, discarded bottle of weed killer shoved into the base of a vine post. It was herbicide, industrial grade. Someone had snuck into my vineyard and dosed the rows. I knelt beside the dead vines, running my fingers through the soil. It stank, and not the earthy rot of compost. This was chemical. I felt heat rise to my face, not from the sun, but from the slow burn of anger I'd kept buried for too long. I called the sheriff again. An actual deputy came out this time. He looked around, took photos, and nodded grimly. You think it was the HOA? I didn't answer. Well, he said, we'll file a report. No cameras near this spot. I shook my head. This corner of the property had older cameras. Bad resolution, narrow range. I'd gotten complacent. That was on me. After he left, I ordered 6 new night vision cameras, motion-activated, weather-sealed, and one big-as-hell floodlight with a motion alarm. If anyone stepped foot near my vines again, I'd know. That same night, I saw a post on the Sunset Glen HOA Facebook group. Someone had leaked screenshots to me through a burner account. It was a message from Karen. A reminder to all residents, if you see suspicious activity on the McCain property, report it immediately. We must remain vigilant. Community safety comes first. Underneath, someone had commented, he's been seen hauling barrels at night. Another person added, why hasn't the county shut him down yet? I gritted my teeth. Karen wasn't just trying to control the neighborhood anymore. She wanted to erase me. If Karen had been testing the waters before, now she was wading in chest deep, flailing her arms and trying to drown me in paperwork. It started with a letter. Another one. This time, a notice of community review signed by the Sunset Glen HOA board. The wording was almost comically dramatic. I was invited to attend a hearing to discuss the concerns of the neighborhood regarding Mr. McCain's continuing non-compliance with aesthetic and safety standards. The kicker? They plan to hold it on my property. I laughed, out loud. Alone in my kitchen, coffee in hand. I even read it aloud to Cooper, who wagged his tail in approval. I sent them a response via my lawyer, a single sentence. Your HOA has no legal jurisdiction over my land, nor any standing to hold hearings regarding it. Cease and desist. A week later, a minivan pulled up to the edge of my property and unloaded folding chairs, a portable podium, and a pair of HOA board members in matching polo shirts and cheap authority. They set everything up right outside my fence line like they were hosting a church revival. Karen naturally was front and center. She wore oversized sunglasses and carried a clipboard like it was a royal scepter. By the time I walked down from the house, about a dozen residents had gathered. Some were clearly just curious, a few obviously annoyed, but a core few, The diehards looked ready to start chanting. Karen spotted me, smiled like she'd just spotted a cockroach that forgot it wasn't supposed to show itself in daylight, and lifted her voice. We're here today to discuss the blight on our shared landscape caused by a property that refuses to respect the norms and expectations of our community. I leaned on my fence post. You mean me? Karen didn't flinch. Mr. McCain, your vineyard has repeatedly disrupted the harmony of Sunset Glen. Your unregulated chemicals, unsightly signage, excessive noise from equipment. What noise? I asked. I harvest with hand tools. And your repeated refusal to engage in good faith dialogue. One of the residents, an older guy I'd seen walking a schnauzer past my gate, raised a hand. Isn't his land not part of the HOA? Karen turned to him, tight smile still glued on. The boundaries of legal jurisdiction are one thing. Moral responsibility is another. Jesus Christ, I didn't stick around for the rest. I had things to do, like run an actual vineyard, not participate in HOA cosplay. Later that evening, I got a call from Luis, a contractor I'd hired for the barn renovations a few months back. He sounded uneasy. Hey, some lady called me, said she was a concerned community member. Asked if I had permits for the electrical work I did at your place. I groaned. Karen? She didn't say, but she knew the dates I was working there. Said if I couldn't produce permits, she might report me to the county. She's bluffing. Hope so. But I'm just giving you a heads up. This woman's nuts. I thanked him, then hung up and started a list. By the end of the week, 3 different people, a soil inspector, a fire marshal, and someone from the zoning office, had stopped by following up on complaints. All of them found nothing. All of them looked vaguely embarrassed. I started printing and laminating all my permits and compliance records. Posted them in the barn next to a sign that read, "Smile, you're on candid camera." Then came the drone. I was out near the east field replacing a cracked irrigation line when I heard it. A low electric hum like an angry hornet. It hovered just above the tree line, dipping in and out of view. I watched it glide over my vines, then make a slow circle around the barn before buzzing away toward Sunset Glen. I'd had enough. That night I installed floodlights on motion sensors, not little porch lights, industrial-grade beams that could illuminate a soccer field. I mounted trail cams around the perimeter, some visible, some not. One even had a thermal scope. Let them come. Let them see what a man protecting his land looks like. I also took the time to upgrade my fencing. Karen liked to harp on visual impact? Fine. I added reclaimed wood panels to the front gate, engraved with the words, "Private property, no trespassing, we are always home." It was subtle, but not really. The next morning there was a fresh flyer tacked to my mailbox. This one was just a single black and white photo of me, taken from the back, clearly through a zoom lens, bent over near the vines working. The caption read, "Is this what you want next to your family?" No contact info, no source, just pure fear-mongering. I crumpled it and tossed it into the compost where it belonged. That afternoon, a familiar truck pulled into my driveway. Tom, the neighbor who'd warned me about the rumors early on. He stepped out holding a 6-pack and a sheepish grin. "Thought you could use one," he said. We sat on my porch, drank in silence for a while. "Karen's losing it," he finally said. "Some folks are starting to talk." "Talk how?" "Not everyone's buying her crap anymore. That HOA meeting? Half the people there left after 10 minutes. And my kid says he saw Karen and Bruce, the zoning guy from the board, arguing behind the clubhouse last night. Real heated." "Bruce Latimer?" Tom nodded. "Yeah, they were whispering about timing and exposure. My son's got big ears. Thought you should know." Something clicked. If Bruce was helping her, this was more than a petty feud. This was coordinated, weaponized. And if they thought I was just going to roll over and take it, they didn't know me at all. The night the fire started, everything felt off. It wasn't the weather, though it was dry as bones and the wind had picked up, the kind of wind that whispers trouble. It wasn't even the silence. I was used to that. It was Cooper. He wouldn't stop pacing, back and forth from the back door to the edge of the porch, ears twitching like he could hear something I couldn't. I stepped outside just after midnight. The air felt electric. I scanned the vineyard with a flashlight, saw nothing but darkness and rows of quiet vines. Until I caught a smell. Smoke. Not wood smoke from a chimney. Not the earthy kind from burning leaves. This was acrid, sharp, chemical. I ran toward the far end of the southern field, and that's when I saw it. A glow. Orange and climbing fast. Flames were eating through the vines like they'd been waiting all year for the chance. The dry leaves and dead grass from the past season were kindling. Within minutes, it wasn't a fire, it was a goddamn wall of it. I screamed for Cooper to get inside and sprinted to the barn to grab extinguishers. Called 911 with the phone wedged between my shoulder and ear while dragging the first hose toward the blaze. Emergency, what's your location? McCain Vineyard. South end's on fire, it's spreading fast. Help is on the way. Evacuate the area. I am the area. I don't remember much of the next 10 minutes. Just heat. The sound of the hose sputtering, a fire truck roaring down the dirt road, shouts from the firemen. Then the surreal moment when someone grabbed my shoulder and pulled me back. You need to step away, sir. I turned and nearly punched the guy. A young firefighter, maybe 20. I dropped the hose and staggered back, smoke pouring out of my lungs like I'd swallowed hell. They managed to contain it before it reached the barn, but not before the southern third of my vineyard was blackened down to the roots. Decades of soil balance, of careful tending, scorched. Steel irrigation lines melted. Oak trellises warped and collapsed. The smell of burning grapes is something I'll never forget. Sweet, sour, and sickening. As the firefighters packed up and the sheriff's department started roping off the area, I sat on the porch steps, black with soot, too tired to think. That's when Karen showed up. No joke. She walked over, in a silk robe and slippers, holding a goddamn cup of tea. "Oh my," she said, "what a tragedy." I stared at her. She blinked innocently. "It looked like quite the blaze. I hope you're insured." I didn't speak. I didn't trust myself to. "I wonder," she added, her voice faux concerned, "do you think this could have started from those barrels in your barn? Maybe an accident with your chemicals?" My jaw clenched so hard I felt my molars grind. "Because," she continued louder now, almost performing for the two sheriff's deputies nearby, "someone mentioned they'd seen you hauling some rather suspicious containers lately. Just things people talk about, you know." I stood, not fast, not aggressive, just stood. She took a half step back. "Karen," I said, voice low, "get off my property." She raised her hands. "I'm simply concerned. The community is shaken." The deputies walked over just as she turned to leave. One of them, older guy, badge-red Carter, gave me a look I couldn't read. Then he said it. "Mr. McCain, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning." I blinked. "You're kidding." He wasn't. No cuffs, just a voluntary detainment while they investigated. But I still ended up in the back of a cruiser riding through the night like a criminal while my land still smoked behind me. At the station, they processed me, took my phone, my clothes, handed me a jumpsuit that smelled like bleach and despair. In the holding cell, I replayed everything, every moment, every warning sign, every escalation. It all led to this. I'd underestimated how far Karen would go, and now, She'd won. By morning, the local news was running a piece. Suspicious blaze destroys controversial vineyard. They even had footage. Karen, wrapped in a throw blanket, giving her statement. I always worried something like this might happen. He had all kinds of chemicals in that barn. It was just a matter of time. She was smiling. The anchors never mentioned that I wasn't charged, just detained for investigation. But they ran with the HOA's statement, which included the phrase, "We've repeatedly warned about the dangers posed by the unregulated activities of Mr. McCain." I sat in that cell for nearly 20 hours before my lawyer finally got through. He looked like hell. "They're dragging this out," he said. "But the good news is we've already got insurance investigators on site. You didn't torch your own field, Ethan, and they know it." I didn't reply. He leaned forward. "Also, we may have something else. You remember Tom's son, the kid, Nick?" I nodded slowly. "He has something. He's not sure what to do with it yet, but it might be big." That was the first crack in the concrete. Later that day, I was released with no charges. But the damage was done. To the vineyard, to my name, to the whole damn truth. I walked out of that station with soot still under my fingernails and a very specific type of fury in my chest, the kind that doesn't burn out, the kind that builds. By the time I got back home, the vineyard looked like a crime scene. Blackened rows, caution tape flapping in the wind. Ash where there should have been color. It felt like stepping into the skeleton of a life that still hadn't realized it was dead. But beneath all that ruin, something had shifted. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one being hunted. I was the one watching. It started with a voicemail. From Nick. "Hey, Mr. McCain? I think I have something, like proof. From my mom's phone, I copied it to a USB. I don't want to get in trouble or anything, but she and Ms. Karen were talking about doing something, and I think they meant the fire. I can meet you at the community pool after school." I saved that message 3 times. That same afternoon, my lawyer got a call from the insurance company's lead investigator. They'd completed their on-site analysis. Their conclusion? Accelerant present, gasoline specifically, multiple pour sites, clear signs of intentional ignition, no evidence of spontaneous combustion, faulty equipment, or electrical malfunction. Translation? It was arson. And with that, the narrative started to buckle. The story about the unstable chemical storage in my barn? Gone. The implication that I'd sabotaged my own harvest for a payout? Dead on arrival. The insurance company flagged the case as criminal fraud attempt by external actors and forwarded everything to the sheriff's office. Suddenly, I wasn't just the guy who got burned. I was a victim, and someone else was about to become a suspect. Karen must have felt it too because she vanished. Not completely, but she stopped making public statements, stopped strolling through the HOA gardens like a queen inspecting her subjects. Her mailbox overflowed with HOA notices. Her prized hydrangeas wilted from neglect. And her house? A flurry of activity. Movers, realtor visits. One of my cameras even caught her loading suitcases into a black Mercedes SUV. At night, she wasn't just stepping back. She was preparing to disappear. Meanwhile, I finally met with Nick. He handed me a cheap flash drive wrapped in a plastic sandwich bag like it was plutonium. "I copied it from my mom's cloud," he said. "She talks to Ms. Karen on speaker a lot. I think she forgot I was even home." I didn't ask why he did it. The look on his face said enough. He wanted to do the right thing. My lawyer plugged the drive into his laptop that night. We listened together in silence. Karen's voice came through first, crisp and unmistakable. "It doesn't have to be big, just enough to send a message. We torch a few rows, nobody gets hurt, and maybe he thinks twice about sticking around." Then another voice, Older male, gruff. You sure you can cover this up if it spreads? You know how fast these things go. Karen again laughing. Please, it'll look like an accident. I already filed complaints about faulty equipment. If anything goes up, they'll think he started it himself. That's the beauty of it. And then, the worst part, the betrayal. Bruce said the zoning board's on our side. He'll make sure any investigators see what we want them to see. Bruce freaking Latimer, the same smug clipboard-wielding zoning rep who'd signed off on multiple HOA notices against me, who'd stood silently at Karen's mock trial on my property and let her grandstand, who had tried to play neutral while helping her from the shadows. Now we had his voice, complicit, clear. And suddenly this wasn't just neighborly harassment, it was a criminal conspiracy. We handed the audio to the sheriff's office the next morning, backed by the insurance findings and a notarized affidavit from Nick, whose identity we promised to protect. The detective's eyes lit up like it was Christmas. The next 48 hours moved fast. Karen listed her house for a quick sale, cash only, no inspections, below market value. Word got out that she'd liquidated part of her investment portfolio. My lawyer got a tip from someone at the title office that she was using an alias, Angela Blake, to book a private flight out of the county. Destination? Panama. That night I sat in my living room with the lights off, sipping wine from the last unburned barrel, watching the security feed. 11:35 p.m. Karen's SUV pulls out of her driveway. No headlights. 11:52. It stops near a private airstrip just outside town. 12:15. Blue and red lights flood the feed. She didn't even make it out of the car. They swarmed her like ants on dropped sugar. Pulled her out, cuffed her, searched the trunk. Inside? A burner phone, a passport and the name Angela Blake, a duffel bag full of cash, and a flash drive labeled HOA files. Bruce was arrested the next morning at a hotel in Santa Rosa. He'd tried to erase the HOA's accounting software. Too bad for him, he didn't know the backups were stored off-site. The audit team recovered everything. The charges? Fraud, arson conspiracy, tampering with evidence, filing false municipal complaints, obstruction of justice, and, in Bruce's case, embezzlement. Word spread like wildfire, no pun intended. The HOA board went into panic mode. Emergency meetings, apologies, resignations, everyone trying to pretend they hadn't heard Karen talk like that they hadn't seen the signs, that they were just victims too. But people weren't buying it anymore. Not after what she did to my land, not after she tried to run. I've been through technical audits, corporate investigations, and one truly miserable IRS review. None of it prepared me for the circus that is a criminal trial. The courthouse in Sonoma County was old but clean, kind of like justice itself in these parts. The state had filed multiple charges against Karen Bishop, Bruce Latimer, and 2 other HOA board members who'd signed fraudulent complaints and helped doctor meeting records. Their names weren't familiar to the public, but the prosecutors made sure they would be by the end of the month. I wasn't just a witness. I was the prosecution's key victim. From the moment jury selection started, Karen's legal team tried to frame the entire thing as a tragic misunderstanding between neighbors. Her lawyer, all slick hair and smug vowels, leaned into phrases like misguided civic engagement and miscommunication gone awry. But none of that held up under evidence. First came the TOR insurance investigators. They brought diagrams, chemical reports, thermal imaging maps, all pointing to accelerants used deliberately across multiple ignition points. One chart showed the gasoline trail leading directly from the fence bordering Karen's property to the first vine that caught fire. Then came the audio recordings. The courtroom went silent when Karen's voice filled the speakers. torch a few rows. Nobody gets hurt. He'll think twice about staying. You could have heard a pin drop. When Bruce's voice chimed in, asking how to cover it up, he sank in his chair like someone had pulled the air from his lungs. Karen didn't flinch. But her face was war, a cocktail of arrogance and desperation. The defense tried to argue the audio was edited, until Nick took the stand. He sat tall, no stuttering, no backpedaling, just clear, confident answers. I made the backup myself. I copied the whole phone archive to the flash drive. They didn't know I could hear them, but I did. The prosecution introduced screenshots of deleted texts, Karen's request for clean insurance photos 2 days before the fire, a memo from Bruce to the HOA accountant with the subject line, "Diversion Funds," a printed ticket for a charter flight to Panama in the name Angela Blake, bank records showing a sudden transfer of $50,000 from HOA reserve funds to a shell company Karen controlled. The whole gallery gasped when the DA revealed the password to that company's account was HOA Queen. No one gasped louder than the judge. Karen finally cracked on the 5th day. Not in words, in posture. She stopped looking at the jury, stopped whispering to her attorney, just stared down, jaw tight, cheek twitching. Bruce tried to strike a deal. Turn on Karen, name names, beg for leniency. It didn't work. The judge, a tall, gravel-voiced woman with absolutely zero tolerance for games, was brutal in her closing. This court does not tolerate vigilantism masquerading as community management. You abused trust, manipulated public systems, endangered lives, and attempted to flee responsibility. This was not petty feuding. This was organized sabotage, and it will be punished accordingly. Then came the sentences. Karen Bishop, convicted on all charges: conspiracy to commit arson, false reporting, insurance fraud, evidence tampering, attempted flight to avoid prosecution. 12 years in prison. No parole for at least 8. Bruce Latimer, conspiracy, fraud, financial misconduct. 8 years. Plus a lifetime ban from holding any public or corporate office. 2 board members on TWE, aiding in cover-up and financial misappropriation. 3 years each. Plus full restitution and permanent disqualification from HOA service. And then came my turn. The judge turned to me and addressed me directly. Mr. McCain, the court recognizes the grave harm you suffered. Material, reputational, emotional. You were targeted by individuals who acted under the guise of law, and you stood your ground. For that, we owe you more than sympathy. We owe you restitution. The HOA, under court order, was fined heavily and placed under outside audit supervision for 5 years. Their remaining board was dissolved, and a new election scheduled under a neutral third party. I was awarded $1,750,000 motsumonu in damages. Part from the insurance company, part directly from HOA reserves, and part poetic justice from Karen's personal assets. Her beloved home, appraised at nearly $2 million, was ordered liquidated to cover costs. As I walked out of that courtroom, the air felt lighter. Reporters rushed up, microphones shoved in my face. One of them asked, "Mr. McCain, do you feel vindicated?" I smiled. I feel like planting grapes. 6 months after the verdict, the vines had started to return. Not all of them. Some soil takes longer to forgive than others, but enough to see green again where there was once only ash. I walked the rows each morning with Cooper trotting beside me, his nose buried in fresh dirt, tail up like he was on patrol. The air smelled clean, earthy, alive. They say fire cleanses, that it clears the rot to make room for something new. Maybe that's true, but if you ask me, sometimes fire just shows you who was willing to burn you and smile while doing it. Karen's house sold at auction. The buyer was a young couple from Oregon. Kind, quiet, early retirement types who didn't even know what an HOA was until they saw the news articles. I sent them a welcome basket, a bottle of wine from my last pre-fire batch, a jar of local honey, and a handwritten card that said, "Welcome to the neighborhood. You're safe now." They brought cookies the next day. Nice people. Sunset Glen HOA? It still exists, technically. But after the court's audit and the arrests, no one wanted to run it. The emergency board was mostly retirees trying to cancel garbage service and keep raccoons out of the tennis courts. The new president is a retired kindergarten teacher named Phyllis who once declared during a Zoom meeting, "I don't care what color anyone paints their mailbox, I just want peace." Bless her. I was invited to the next community meeting, not by subpoena this time. By vote. Phyllis opened the floor by saying, "We're hoping Mr. McCain will consider sharing some of his hard-won wisdom." I took the mic, looked around at the crowd, familiar faces, some still embarrassed, some genuinely apologetic, and smiled. "Well," I said, "lesson 1, don't let crazy people near gasoline." The room exploded with laughter. Even Phyllis chuckled behind her lemon bar. After that, I stepped down and watched from the back as they debated whether to allow solar panel installations and whether HOA funds could be used to repaint the park bench. It was charming, normal, exactly what a community should be. Outside, I found Nick waiting for me by the bike rack. He'd grown a little taller, a little more confident. He handed me a small notebook. "My mom said it's okay to give this to you now. She's doing better." I flipped it open, drawings of the vineyard sketched in colored pencil. Cooper running through the rows, grape leaves curling in the wind, even the barn with its new coat of green paint. "You did this?" He nodded. "Yeah, I want to be an artist, or a lawyer, still deciding." "Do both," I said. "Sue people and then sketch them in jail." He laughed. "You gonna plant again?" "Already started." He grinned. "Good." As I walked back to my truck, I saw something on the gate, a new note scrawled in Sharpie on a piece of scrap wood nailed to the post. It read, "No Karens beyond this point. Survivors of arson welcome." I left it there. Seemed fair. That night I opened a bottle from my new micro batch. Just 22 bottles survived the last fire. And this one was smoky, bold, complicated as hell, like life. I took a sip, leaned back and watched the stars rise above the vineyard, still standing, still mine.